My favorite weapon is a map. If I have a map, the worst I'll ever be is wrong, but I won't be lost. And that's why I tell men about the Bible. I'm like, hey, listen, read that Bible like it was a letter written to you by your Creator that's leading you back home to Him. We can tend to look at God as just the best man we know, but He's not. He's not a man. His ways are far and beyond us, and that means we just need to be able to take Him at face value.
If the metric of my faith and success is understanding,
is comprehension,
I'm in trouble.
100%. Yet we do that with God. Anything plus imagination multiplied by fear is gonna be too much. Like, my deal is like, give the dragon a name, then fight it. I don't even know if that was your question, man. I just went on a hard tangent highway.
I'm riding the wave, man.
I went a hard tangent highway there.
Welcome back to the MakeReady Podcast. My name is Brian Sims, and today I get to sit down with Clint Bruce. Clint is a former Navy SEAL, NFL linebacker, and is now a leader of men, helping them define their purpose in life. We talk about faith, family, and how to keep Christ the center of every battlefield of your life. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, follow. That'll really help us out in the algorithm. Enjoy.
Clint Bruce.
Yeah.
This is fun.
You know you're in for it when you got monosyllable first name and last name.
There's more of an official feel to it.
My name has been mispronounced once in my entire life. Because how do you mispronounce Bruce?
Well, now I'm curious.
I made a tackle one time, and they said, tackle made by Clint Bruce.
on the
big mo, and even the other team was like, Brussa. Is that how you say it? I'm like, no. I've never heard it said that way before. Like, you almost got to try to mispronounce it. Brussa.
It's almost intentional.
How'd you get Brussa out of that?
That must be from another team.
French.
I bet. Yeah.
So.
Well, Clint, we have kind of orbited around each other for a long time through Watermark, we were just talking about people that we know, and it's just crazy. It's just starting to pull the thread. I was reading your bio, and I was like, golly, how do I introduce this guy?
This is Forrest Gumpian.
I did. Did you write that?
This is very Forrest Gumpian, kind of lean forward, try hard, take notes.
Tell me your story. I would love to hear your story to share with people.
Man, I'm just this really fortunate guy, man. I was, if you look at just kind of the highlights of my kind of bio, you'd think that I was a talented person, but the truth really isn't. I mean, my gift is not being gifted, right? I always tell these young guys that are struggling in football and all these other, doing the hard things. I was like, man, I was so bad in football in ninth grade that my coach told me to stop wasting his and my time and just go to theater. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go to theater because Molly Johnson's there and I love her when we get married. But I'm going to still play football just make you mad, right? And I think that willing to do hard stuff for the sake of it being hard has always kind of blessed me, right? I've been blessed by that. And, so I grew up in Arkansas. I have an amazing mom and dad. My dad died when I was young. We talk about that a little bit later. My mom's hilarious. My dad was a big, funny guy, and I don't think we realized how funny my mom was until my dad passed away, because she's got this different kind of humor. I've got an incredible older sister, an amazing little baby brother, played football at Oklahoma State, an actual athlete. My little brother played at the high school that I played at, and so when I was playing at the Naval Academy, I'd call back and check with the coaches, because my coaches who coached me coached him. And I'd say, hey, how's Tanner doing? They're like, he's doing great. I'm like, is he training hard and playing hard? They're like, yeah. I'm like, are we the same kind of athlete? They go, no. I'm like, what do you mean? Is I'm big and strong and he's lean and fast? They're like, no. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, he's an athlete. Like, your brother's a legitimate athlete. You're just angry. And I was like, yeah, all right. I'm probably
you got to point that anger in the right direction.
Yeah, you got to, but we moved down to Texas when I was in middle school, down to Garland.
The Holy Lands.
Yeah, it's King of the Hills based on Garland, man, Bobby, and then started to become pretty good in football. Really, my junior year in high school, like I never started a game till halfway through my junior season because one guy got hurt, another guy got booted from the team, and we were up by like 20-something points. And my coach, Coach Sessom at the time, he reminds me all the time that when he put me in, he wouldn't make eye contact with the head coach because he thought he was going to get in trouble for putting me in. And it's even worse. My dad, this is before he got sick, my dad would go and film, right? And on film, you hear people saying, Richard, Clint's in. And on film, my dad goes, Clint's not in. Clint's never in. I come in and I film y'all's kids, and y'all get me all excited, but Clint's never going to play, right? And he's just talking about how bad I was at football on film. And in his defense, there's a lot of evidence to support his skepticism, right? Then all of a sudden you hear, sack made by Clint Bruce, and never left the field after that. But I tell people it was the 3 years of relentless scout team that made me good because I was just massing reps, right? Like
probably more than others.
Oh yeah, I mean you get 3 to 4 reps for every 1 rep the talented guy is getting, right? And on top of that, with scout team, you play all these different positions, so you're kind of building this. Indirectly, you're building this kind of intuitiveness, this instinctiveness for the game. And I still remember the play. I mean, the second half against J.J. Pierce in 1990. And I remember getting out the linebacker. I didn't know the plays or anything. And I remember lining up the linebacker and looking at the guard, and the guard didn't have a lot of weight on his hands. And I was like, when I play guard on scout team and I'm going to pull, I sit back. So maybe he's pulling. And I shot the gap, made the sack, and but it really was all those reps of, it was empathy and experience and just massing the repetitions. And I think one, it kept football young for me. I was never really tired of it. And then two, just those reps built the talent that just kind of kept getting revealed to me almost real time, right? And so my senior year was getting a lot of interest by a lot of schools. I'd played at a great school, South Carolina at the time, had some really, really good football players there. So our school would get a lot of attention. And then my dad got sick the summer for my senior year and just kind of bounced in and out of the hospital during the fall of my senior year. And then went into the hospital in January and never came out. And just kind of watched him wither away physically. But the coolest, my dad died well. I mean, he lived well and he died well. And the reason I say he died well is because watching him love the Lord as he was dying, it was remarkable. I mean, I would go in and see him, and there'd be doctors and nurses just hanging out with him in his room, and he would just hold court. And he grew up really, really poor in South Texas and had a tough life, built an amazing life with my mom, for my sister and my brother, and was one of those guys that really impacted the community in a lot of different ways. And it made me really angry. You know, I didn't as a meritocracy kind of guy, I didn't understand why God would bench a guy or take a guy that was doing such great things. And
like he's effective. Why would you take him?
Yeah, well, it didn't make sense to me. And then, I would say that for the first couple of years after my father passed away, my faith stayed intact mostly because I didn't want my dad to be wrong. Like, my dad died loving Jesus. And if I kind of walked away from my faith, it would have meant that my dad was wrong. And I didn't want my dad to be wrong, which is not the best reason to cling to your faith. But God is incredibly patient for us. I mean, that's all Psalms is. All Psalms is David complaining. Like, I didn't do anything. These people were trying to kill me. I'm like, you didn't do anything. Didn't get one of your guys killed. Look at what is, well, I mean, yeah, but so it's like, but you know, had an opportunity to play at a bunch of different schools. Really fortunate, and then, but I'd always loved the Army-Navy game, and it was kind of a funny story. I've said it on another podcast, but one of the questions I get asked all the time is, when did you want to be a Navy SEAL? And for years, I couldn't remember when I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. I just don't remember not wanting to be one, but I couldn't point to this kind of origin moment, right? Until I remember during COVID. And there's nothing really redemptive about COVID, other than I got to spend unbelievable amounts of time with my daughters. You know, I've got 3 girls. And my oldest, I remember coming home from work because I'd still going to work. And my oldest said, "Dad, you want to watch Magnum PI?" I'm like, "Heck yeah, I want to watch Magnum PI 100%. And she turned on the new one. I'm like, no, we're not watching that one, right?
What is that?
So we went back to, it was like, you don't do that. You don't remake Smokey and the Bandit. You don't make Cannonball Runs. You don't remake Magnum PI. You don't remake Manimal. Remember Manimal? Manimal
it's messing with history.
100%, right? Airwolf and
True Grit.
True Grit, and although the remake of True Grit is actually pretty good,
I was gonna say.
But so we started watching the original Magnum PI, which is actually really it was really a progressive series. I mean, if you look at from a TC, black veteran entrepreneur, always saved Magnum and Rick all the time. I mean, and then it was one of the first shows that really talked about kind of the phenomenon of PTSD and all these other things, right? So it was really fascinating. But there's an episode in the second season where they kind of reveal that the character Thomas Magnum played football at the Naval Academy and was a Navy SEAL. And when I saw that scene, it had this like hyper lucid recall, and it wasn't this suppressed memory or anything. It's just you don't think about it, right? And then also I had this hyper lucid memory of sitting next to my dad in 5th grade, chubby little Clint Bruce, Little Rock, Arkansas, watching Magnum PIs at Thursday nights at 8 p.m., right? And I remember turning to look at my dad and going, "Hey, Dad, I'm playing football at the Naval Academy, be a Navy SEAL." And my dad was like, "All right." And that's kind of, I think, where the whole thing started, right? So
Is that little seed?
yeah. And my dad was in the hospital up here at Medical City, and I would come and see him, and I was getting all these, interests and visits in schools and stuff. I remember going to see my father in the hospital, and he goes, "Son, you have to make a 40-year decision, not a 4-year decision about what you do next," right? And I mean, that's kind of synthesized what his words were. And so for me, I just knew going to a place like a service academy, the Naval Academy in particular, as the oldest son, I had some responsibilities. And I'll never forget this conversation. If you ever watched Beowulf, like the original Beowulf, so there's a scene. My dad had just kind of really, went in the hospital, he's my size, big, strong, powerful guy. And then when he passed away, I could almost carry him in one arm. He just physically declined so much. And I remember going up to talk to him about, playing football in college and all this other stuff. And my dad goes, "Hey, son, we got to talk about what happens if this doesn't work out." And I didn't want to hear that. I was not ready to hear my dad kind of talk about an outcome that we didn't want. And I've always been one of those positive guys. I've always believed you get what you expect, regardless of what it is. Whatever you expect is probably what you're going to get. And I've always been a pretty upbeat, intense guy. So I just wasn't ready to consider a scenario where my dad didn't make it. But I remember this. I pushed back and I was like, "Dad, I want it." And he grabbed my arm. And when he grabbed my arm, he squeezed my arm with this strength that was inconsistent with what his physicality was. And the reason I bring up Beowulf was because in that moment, and I think we were reading it in school at the time, and there's a moment where Beowulf attacks the Great Hall again, or Grendel attacks the Great Hall again, and Beowulf grabs his arm. And all of a sudden the point of view flips to Grendel. And Grendel talks about how he knew this wasn't a mere mortal, the grip, strength. And I thought about that with my dad. I was like, man, he's still powerful. And my dad looked at me and goes, "Son, leaders talk about what they don't want to talk about. They say what they don't want to say. They plan for what they don't want to happen, and they do what they don't want to do. And that's what makes them a leader." And so for me, that was kind of the line in the sand, and the willingness to talk about the things you don't want to happen and to plan for those things. And so that's really when the Naval Academy became the place. Not only did I want to go, I needed to go there. And the stars just kind of aligned to allow me into that place, because academically I probably didn't belong there. And so played football at the Naval Academy. And I think the Naval Academy saved me in a lot of ways. And I had opportunities to play at A&M and Baylor, Arkansas, these other guys. I didn't want to play at I wanted to play at Arkansas because I grew up in Arkansas, but I didn't want to play for that kind of staff at the time. And I always joke about it. My bride went to the University of Arkansas. And if I'd gone to the University of Arkansas to play football, she would have never married me. I just promise you. So all things work for good, right? And so I had a really fun, powerful career there. Some of the closest friends of my life are guys I played football with. And the experience of being an athlete at a service academy, I think, is different. Like my little brother tells me all the time, that he is jealous of the relationship I have with the guys I played football with compared to what he had at Oklahoma State. And he had some really great friends too. And that's a lot of times the experience. When I was doing the NFL thing, it was interesting to see the relationship a lot of the guys I played with had with their teammates, vice what I had with our teammates. And, you know, like, because in the service academy football, like all the metaphors, they're not metaphors. You know, play like the guy next to his life depends on you. Well,
it actually
does, right? And, you know, the Army-Navy game, always really special. Wanted to be a part of that. I remember I got interviewed one time about where the Army-Navy game kind of sat in this hierarchy of bowl games, rivalry games, right? And I just kind of asked the producer, because it felt like a loaded question to me, because neither Army nor Navy were really good from a record perspective. And he kind of listed off, you know, obviously A&M, Texas, and like Oklahoma, all these, you know, Michigan, Ohio State. I said, listen, I love those games. I love those rivalry games. But Army-Navy stands apart. And he was kind of like, why? And I'm like, well, you show me another game where everybody playing is wanting to die for everybody watching, and I'll tell you that we have company. Because that's the truth of that game, right? And he was rightly kind of humbled, and I didn't mean it to humble him, but I meant it, and so to be a part of that, and I've always wanted to be a part of things that that make an impact on the community that I don't know that I can do, where I'm going to be surrounded by people that I'm going to have to work hard to keep up with, and that are worth doing even if nobody's watching. And so played the Naval Academy, had an opportunity to play in the NFL. Like, no one knows I played in the NFL.
Just gloss over that.
Well, I mean, listen, I played the same position as Ray Lewis at the Baltimore Ravens. That's why no one knows I played in the NFL. I mean, there's a whole secret society of quarterbacks that backed up Brett Favre and linebackers that backed up Ray Lewis. No one knows who we are. Like, and I remember being at practice one time watching Ray do something, and this is his second year. So he hadn't really become the Ray Lewis, but everybody knew he was going to be special if he could kind of mature and grow like we all have to do, right? And I remember watching him do something. I'm like, man, it might be easier to become a Navy SEAL than beat out Ray Lewis. So it was. So I left.
Just does something supernatural.
I was like, that's it. So left the NFL, went through SEAL training, blessed, make it. Went back out to SEAL Team 5 once I'd made it through training, and then the Saints called and said, hey, do you want to come? This was pre-9/11. So I went back out to the Saints and just kind of really quickly remembered that everything I love about football was kind of 10X in the military and in the special operations community. So it was
Why is that?
I love the intangibles. Like, I love the camaraderie, the brotherhood, the suffering, the violence for a purpose. Like, I loved all that, right? And it seems like every level you go up, the purity of that thing you're doing kind of gets diluted. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's, there's dudes playing in the NFL for the money. And why would we? Everybody's doing something just for the money, like selling insurance, whatever, right? So I get it, right? And they're able to make massive impacts on the community and change their families because of the money associated with being a pro football player. But I just loved the camaraderie, the locker, the hardness of it, like the everyday trying to figure out if you're going to make it, and I just felt like being in the military had all that plus purpose that few things rivaled, right?
Do you think that's innate in men and fundamental to being a man? Do you think that's something unique with you?
No. I think it's innate in everybody. I think it's just a question, when does it get suppressed? When does it get suppressed? When does it get diluted? Suppressed may not be the right word. Diluted may be the better word, right? I think, if you ask a kid in first grade what he wanted to be, astronaut, pilot, police officer, all these other things, right? And as the world, as they get older and the world starts punching them in the throat, they that desire to do these remarkable things kind of gets diluted, not suppressed, but reality kicks in.
Right.
And I think I've never been the guy that thinks your passion and your profession have to align. I think there's some dangers in that if you're not careful, right?
Identity issues.
Oh yeah. Well, and I also think there's these work-life balance things that create, like, I do what I love, right? Because I need to love something to be any good at it, right? But it can induce as many work-life issues as having a job you hate if you're not careful, right? All things in moderation. So I think everybody has that desire to be purposeful and to be shared around purpose. And that's why I tell business guys all the time, I was like, hey man, profitability is not purpose. What you do with profitability is highly purposeful. Like for me, that's like a bullet. in and of itself is nothing, but what I can do with that, you know, to liberate the suppressed and the oppressed and protect good against evil, right? So, but I think that for me, I've always been a highly purposeful person. It's a form of stewardship. It's how I was raised. It's what I want to be around. And so for me, leaving the NFL was really easy. It wasn't. You know, my bride was like, "Listen, I love that you want to serve more than you want to play, but just out of curiosity, like, how much money did we just lose?" I was like, "Babe, I think rookie minimum at the time was like $290,000 or something like that." I'm like, "We're going to be making $24,780 a year, but we get to shop at the commissary.
It's going to be awesome.
And dental's free."
Wait, when did you get married in the middle of all of this?
Oh, I got married as soon as I could after the Naval Academy. Okay. I met my bride when I was a junior, going into my junior year at the Naval Academy, and I was done. Like I'd have married her. I think I asked her if I could marry her like on the third date. She's like, "We need to go on some more dates." I'm like, "Probably." And people ask me like, "Why'd y'all get married so quickly after the Naval Academy?" I'm like, "Because here's what I knew. I knew this is the best I'm ever going to look. Like, I'm never going to look this good again." You know, June 21st, 1997, I was peaking.
The clock is ticking.
Well, I had a choker whites and, you know, and women at the time, you know, when you saw choker whites, you thought like Richard Gere, Tom Selleck, Tom Cruise. So I had her dazzled. And I knew, I was like, I'm never going to look this good again. Good. So I got to lock this down. Like, if I give her time to think about it, she might back away. And I tell this joke all the time that she was dating a guy when I met her. Great dude. And I saw a picture. I'm like, that's a handsome guy. Because my wife's beautiful. She's stunning. She's more beautiful on the inside. But if you don't know her, you just see her external beauty, right? But it is matched and exceeded by her internal beauty. And I saw that guy, and I told her, I said, "Listen, that's a good-looking guy. He might be one of the better-looking guys I've ever seen in my entire life. But I'm funny." And here's the deal. He's not always going to be that good-looking. I'm just going to get funnier. So you got to pick the horse you want to ride. And the funny thing is I saw him, I think a year ago, at an Arkansas football game, because my daughters go there now. And I went up to her, I was like, "Listen, I was wrong. Like, I don't know how he did it, but he's better looking now than when you dated him." Like, I don't know if he's thinking this Robert Redford bill or something. I'm like, my gosh, like, I don't know if I'm funnier than he's better looking, but we have 3 daughters, you know, and you got to stick with me here. And I'll get on a treadmill every once in a while. But yeah, so I got married. I mean, we were dating my junior, senior year. We'll be married 28 years in a few weeks. She's been through all my deployments, all that stuff. I mean, all my friends I've lost are her friends, and she knows their wives, and she's remarkable. You know, we're just on the other side of carry the load. And, you know, and I tell people give me a lot of credit for starting carry the load. I'm like, no, Amy started it. My bride started it because she just challenged me in my anger to do something about the things that she said, "I've never known you to not do something of the things that make you mad. So do something or get over it." And so she kind of kicked me out of the house on Memorial Day back in 2006. And that's kind of the origin of the whole thing. So, yeah, we've been married a long time. She's awesome. It's really a lot of me just being patient, letting the Lord work on her heart and just help her. I can't even finish that statement. Yeah. Everyone looks at me and I'm like, I know. Right? Mansions in heaven. So yeah, we've been married a long time. It's awesome.
That's awesome.
She's a cool chick.
That's awesome. So you go into buds and all that stuff.
Yeah, that was interesting, man. And I tell everybody, like, again, I go back to this earlier, like, my gift is not being gifted. And what I saw in the NFL is that when certain guys got in the NFL, it was the first time they weren't talented enough. And it can rock you when that happens, right?
Yeah.
Because all of us have to go through these moments of recalibration and forced reinvention because of circumstances or the ebbing of our talent or the exceeding of our talent when we a mighty endeavor, right? And I remember this one guy, he was insanely fast human, but it was the first time he wasn't the fastest guy in the room, and it rocked him.
Yeah.
And the coaches were kind of giving him a hard time. And I said, "Hey, that's not a character issue. That's an exposure issue."
That's interesting.
Like, when's the first time you realized you weren't fast enough? Like, for me, it was 5th grade. And like, when I realized I wasn't the fastest guy in the room, I went home to a mother, father, you know, 3 hots and a cot. Like, and this kid's always been fast enough, and all of a sudden he's not fast enough. So the physiology of, like, it takes us all time to recalibrate the amygdala, the limbic system, and the brain goes through all this stuff when it realizes it doesn't have enough anymore. And here's a kid who was in a position to extract his family from poverty based on his speed. Then all of a sudden he's not fast enough. I said, you need to give that time and you need to handle that carefully. And they did. And he had a remarkable career, right? But nothing's ever been that easy for me. So when it got hard, I was used to it. Like, guys like, it's the hardest Tuesday of my life. Like, every third Tuesday is the hardest Tuesday of my life, right? So when I say my gift is not being gifted, I very much mean it because I had to build this grit and this resilience and this kind of mechanism.
Like a just do it attitude.
Yeah, but a little more process oriented than that. Like when I was in 8th grade, it's kind of an embarrassing story. Well, it's not embarrassing anymore. But when I was in 8th grade, I was so invisible on the football team that the only way I could get the coaches to know who I am is I'd pick up the pads like after practice, right? And I remember one time I was dragging in the pads. This is Brandenburg Middle School, Garland, Texas. And I was picking up the pads, and I got to the back door, and they'd locked the back door. And I was like, oh, this is really funny. Then I turned and look at, like, the coaches are leaving. Like, they totally forgot I'm out here, right? So I dive in front of one of my coaches. He hits me, but I'm wearing my pads, so it's fine. And I remember he goes like, hey, why are you dressed like one of my football players? I'm like, I'm one of your football players. It gets worse. They open up the back, and he looked at me and goes, son, when you're in 8th grade, you can be on this team. I'm like, I'm in 8th grade.
And
I've been on this team for 2 years, man. But I remember going home, and I still have the piece of paper I wrote this on. I wrote down this thing called the achievement equation. And as I reflect, it has shaped almost everything I've ever done. And what the achievement equation is angles plus allies plus advantages equals achievement. And so angles are understanding your craft, getting better at your craft. Allies are who you're running with, and do they mean what they say as much as you mean what you say? And advantages for me have always been treasure and talent, right? People go time, I'm like, no, because all treasure and talent do is give you more time. Like time's absolute. Your treasure can help you save it, and your speed can help you use it better, right? So, but for me, what I realized is no matter what happened, I could always have 2/3 of that. I could always have angles, and I could always have allies. And then I could constantly reassess my advantages, right? I could measure my talent against something else. I could point this talent I had towards other things, right? And like I'm super grateful for that coach who told me to go to theater, because I tell people all the time, like, I think football got me ready for the SEAL teams and all that stuff from the neck down. I think theater helped me get ready for everything else. Because theater teaches you to create a persona and then inhabit that character, right? And I think we do that all the time. Like, hey, and it's not disingenuous at all. It's like, hey, what version of me will my bride love the most? And how do I create that character? And how do I inhabit that character? And how do I refine that character? And this isn't about being fake. This is about taking percentages of yourself and optimizing those, and then reducing the signature of all these other ones, right? So like when I was playing football, I was like, what percentage of Clint does football require? And I would cleave out the percentages that the game needed the most, and I'd leave the rest of me on the bench or in the locker room. And so for me, I think theater really taught me how to do that, and how do I kind of distill the parts of me that are most relevant for this, and not bring the baggage of the other things to this particular battle, right?
Do you think some people take that and they become inauthentic?
Sure.
So how do you do that but maintain authenticity?
Well, this is kind of the allies piece, right? Like when you surround yourself with people, faithful are the wounds of a friend, and you have people that keep you in check, and you have people that should be that sounding board as you begin to cultivate this persona, this version of yourself for this endeavor, right? Like I have all these like little mechanisms I use to kind of help me. And one of the things I always say is kind of chase, pace, and pull. Like a lot of life comes down to who you're chasing and what life's going to look like if you actually catch them. And you got to keep pace with people that are going the same direction and will leave you behind if you don't do the work. You got to run with people that'll keep you honest, and then you got to pull someone behind you. Either because you're going to be doing this for longer than you need to, or longer than you're good at it if you don't. So this is Paul, Timothy, Barnabas, right? And so for me, making sure you stay authentic and you're creating these percentages of you in this persona vice somebody else, right? I think that's the function of the allies in a lot of ways. They keep you honest, right? And I think, again, I think that's why I love about Shakespeare so much. Like you could play every Shakespeare play 10 different ways, right? And you can make a comedy, a dark one, and you know, it's how do you take that particular character and how do you inject some of your stuff in there?
Using all the same elements.
All the same elements, man. And when I say all of life is acting, that doesn't, I'm not saying don't be you. I'm saying point the percentages of you that this thing needs most to that particular battle, right? Mm-hmm. And inhabit these. I'm a real visual guy. Like, one of the questions I get asked all the time is, hey, what's your favorite gun? And it's a natural question. Like, I'd ask me to, given my background, right? But I answer the question I want to answer, and I go, are you asking what my favorite gun is or what my favorite weapon is? And the younger they are, the more male they are, the faster they'll go, it's the same thing. And I always go, no, it's not. A gun is a tool. A weapon is what I use to win. My favorite weapon is a map. Because once I have a map, I have everything. I know where the bad guy will be. I know what to come in, what to bring, what to leave, how to get home. And if I have a map, the worst I'll ever be is wrong. But I won't be lost. Huh. And wrong and lost are different animals, right? And for me, I've always kind of looked at life as this kind of map. And the way I describe my life biographically is I've lived on the ball field, the battlefield, the boardroom, and the breakfast table. And how I run my life is with 3 maps: the ball field, the boardroom, and the breakfast table. And all 3 are a battlefield at any given time. So let me explain that a little more. The ball field kind of biographically describes my season life as an athlete. You know, playing football here, playing football at the Naval Academy, being in the SEAL teams. You're just a tactical athlete in the special operations community. But now it's how I guide and govern this desire to take care of myself mentally and physically so I can perform at a high level with the number of days God gives me, right? The battlefield describes my season life as a member of the military. Like, I love being a SEAL, but I loved more so being a member of the United States military. Like, for me, the being a SEAL is a position on the field, right? And it takes all of us. The boardroom was professional endeavors. Like, how do I provision for myself and my family in a way that I'm proud of, that makes a difference? And then the breakfast table, we're on the breakfast table our whole lives. We're born on our breakfast table. Sometimes that's great. Sometimes it could be better. We have a lot of authorship over that. Mm-hmm. But then we build a breakfast table. We have total authorship of that, right? And when I kind of run my life, it's, you know, if I drew it for you, it'd be like 3. The way I see it is the breakfast table is that map you open up in Google Maps, right? And then the ball field and the boardroom are layers that you toggle on top of it. And I look at life as like these 3 bounding goals and objectives that are mutually in support of each other. So, like, if I have these goals and objectives at the breakfast table, but my ball field, my mental health goals aren't keeping up. So, like, for me, it's 2 snipers on the hill and a bounding overwatch is how I know how to move, right? But I will confess to you that the most scared I've ever been is when I left the ball field and the battlefield and I came to the boardroom. And we were talking about that before we recruited this, because there's no mystery about where the high ground is on the ball field and battlefield. Like, you know where it is.
It's very defined.
It's like Super Bowl, national championship, whatever. So
success is binary.
100%, right? And not only that, there's an ecosystem and an infrastructure you step into that is solely dedicated to getting you as high and as far up the high ground on the maps that matter to you as you're willing and capable of going. You have coaches, you have teammates. And in the military, we have senior enlisted, we have officers, right? But when you came to the boardroom, man, the boardroom was not like that. You have to build it. And it's one of the things I'm so grateful for with my relationship with, like, Ty Wagner, Kyle Thompson, and Rob Holmes, and Mike Lewis, and Holt Lunsford, and the list goes on and on. I always get nervous because I never want to leave anybody out. But the way I've always said is the way to get to high ground is always the same. You find and follow the right person in the right places. You become your version of what you love about them. In the ball field, in the battlefield, you don't have to find them. They're assigned to you. In the boardroom, you better find them. Because the devil's going to throw things in front of you that look great, right? And so for me, it's that's what this whole thing is, this adventure towards this high ground. And that's why I tell men about the Bible. I'm like, hey, listen, if you want to go from lost to being wrong, read that Bible like it was a letter written to you by your Creator that's leading you back home to Him. The Bible's a map that brings you all the way back home, right? And so for me, kind of all these, making the decision about what to do next, a lot of it has to do is like, hey, what am I gifted and capable of? And is and how do I harmonize this boardroom goal and objective with the responsibilities and opportunities I have to be a husband and daddy, and then how do I take care of this single issue system called the body and the brain that God gave me once, right? And so it's, for me, it's very methodical, very intentional. It's very much like planning a mission every day. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. I mean, I think even beyond that, it's, you know, you're not giving your fire team like you are.
Buddy,
you have to find it.
100%. I tell people all the time, like, the most lost and lonely I've ever been is when I came from the ball field and the battlefield and I came to the boardroom.
Right. Your guys are kind of decided for you.
Yeah.
And that's not something you have to build the muscle to find them.
Right. You know, and you know, not having a father and then just becoming a father. My daughter was born while I was over. So I came home to this little 8-month-old daughter and a tired bride, man. And it was the scariest moment of my life because everything else I'd done, there was like, it was voluntary. Like, you know, everyone in the military knew why they were there. There's no, you know, Amy chose me, I chose her, right? But I was, you know, this daughter didn't choose me. She didn't choose her mom, but she's 100% responsible, right? And so if anything bad happens, it's my fault. I did it, right? And so for me, that's why I'm grateful for my relationships and my faith and my family. And I had men that just kind of hunted me. That just saw versions of themselves and me probably and just refused to let me kind of isolate and figure it out on my own. I've always been very fortunate to have mentors and I've always been very intentional about finding them. Like, it's probably the question, it might be the hardest question I've ever asked is like, who's your mentor? I'm like, I have hundreds of them.
Yeah.
Like, why would I ever deny myself? I'd chase these dudes down. I forget what I look like sometimes. So I'm like, hey, your teenage daughter's holding your hand. Like, how do you do that? And my wife's like, he doesn't mean anything by it. He's just trying to, you know, because like, if I see a dad with a great relationship with his daughter, like, I want to know how he does that. Like, there's nothing new under the sun. There's a way that you're loving, you're leading your daughters that I can integrate in how I'm trying to love and lead my daughters. Or I see men and women that are married and they're just so clearly still in love with each other and they still have this kind of dating. And I ask, I'm like, how do you do that? Like, how do you love her so well? And because ignorance is not really an option, you know, for me. And the wisdom is available and abundant. You just got to get over yourself. And like a lot of times I tell you, it's just like competing fears against each other. Like, what's my greater fear? You finding out I don't know, or me failing the person who needs me to know? And when you put them in, that was like, I'm way more afraid of failing the person that needs me than you realizing I don't know something. And so it's not about not having fear. It's about this creating this fear hierarchy and letting them compete. And you'll generally choose the lesser fears, the greater value often, right? And like, there's probably a million people that know that I just want to kind of I want to be the guy my girls want to marry one day. I want to be a purposeful, passionate, protective, and a provider. And the reason they know it is because I tell them. And the reason I tell them is because I need the accountability, you know. And accountability is scary, but failing's worse. I'm way less scared of accountability than I am of my daughters coming home with a guy who was like me when I wasn't who I needed to be, right? And so again, it's not about not being afraid. It's about doing something with it. I have this, you know, for me, I don't vilify fear. I'm a words guy. Probably more than I should be, but I don't like the word fearless, because I think fear is just a signal. Like, God gave us like a traffic signal, right? And after fear, you have a choice. You have afraid or you have ready. And I'm all about the road to ready. And when you have fear and you don't do anything about it, that's called being afraid. And so the word my daughters know is unafraid. They don't use the word fearless, although it's one of the best SEAL books of all time about Adam Brown. But unafraid is the word I've always taught them. I don't use the word unbroken, another great book, another great movie, because we're all broken.
Yeah.
Like, so for me, it's indomitable. Indomitable is the word I use. Like, hey, let's take out unbroken and let's put indomitable in there. Because indomitable means I'll just get back up. Like, Rocky was indomitable. There's that scene, you know, my buddy Goggins talks about this, you know, and I've known him for a long time. But he talks about this scene in the first Rocky where Apollo is in the corner, he thinks he won, and he looks over and Rocky's back up. And you just see this weariness in Apollo's face, like, oh. You know, it's not about, so for me, we always listen to what we say to ourselves.
Yeah.
So we need to be real thoughtful about what we say to ourselves. I don't even know if that was your question, man. I just went on a hard tangent highway.
I'm riding
there,
the wave, man.
I went a hard tangent highway there. I'm waiting for my ADHD meds
this
to
is
kick
all the
in.
genesis of this podcast of Make Ready is that men are not ready.
No.
And
you never are.
You never are, but it's a posture, not a place.
I love that. It is a posture. That's the best word for it. Is like decide you're going to be ready. Like that's the whole thing. Like if you don't have a map, you're not on a mission. You're on the run. If you don't have a map, you're not on mission. You're on a run. Like you're on mission when you got a map. If you don't have a map, you're on the run, right? And so my deal is like a map has 5 things. It says 4 boundaries and an X that you think is right. And the boundaries are more important than the X. So the boundaries are that line between the always and the nevers, right? And as you get older, you stack nevers. And what you're always going to do gets less and less, but you know you're always going to do them. And so if you were to visualize this, it'd be like moral, mental, spiritual, physical. I put spiritual's north, right? And you're like, hey, I'm always going to do this. I'm never going to do this. And that populates those boundaries. And it's not that the X's aren't important. It's just they don't. For me, I said this years ago, like there's no X on the map you get to this side of glory where you think of everything. There's no house, spouse, car. Like there's generally misery on the other side on the X because sometimes not always, I shouldn't have said it that way. X's can become idols. X's on the maps can become idols. And God's really clear on what he'll do with idols, right? And one of the God's favorite things to do, it seems, it's not his favorite. He doesn't like doing this. But a lot of times he gives us what we want so we can see it for what it is. You know, Israel, hey, I want to be your king. We want a human king. I want to be your king. We want a man. All right, I'm going to give you a man from Central Casting. You know,
here you go.
Here you go. 6'4", jacked, good hair, and he's going to do what any false idol is going to do, right? Like that, the house of David was really, really interesting, really well done, right? But so for me, that it's not that X's aren't important. You got to have them, right? I just tell people like, plans in pencil, prayers in ink, right? And there's X's on the map worth going to and people worth going with. And you bounce around towards Jesus till you meet him. And that's kind of it, right? And so that's why I say the boundaries are more important than the X, right?
We seem to be in a time, especially with men, that this rugged individualism of I can do it on my own. I don't need a map. I can just figure it out.
Sure.
And the guys, like you said, they just live their life on the run. We find ourselves where one of the loneliest places for men in the world is in a church pew.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it is because of what we've been told and what we've told ourselves about what winning looks like. And we tend to have these blinders on. Like it is not hard to find a story about unfulfilling success. It might be, one of the more abundant stories out there, right? But we just don't listen to it. We're like, well, when I win the Heisman or when I win this, it'll be different for me. Like, why will it be different for you? Or can you just be like every other guy that made this 10th millionth dollar and been like, oh, right? And so I think we just listen to the wrong things. And I think sometimes men just gotta, one of the reasons I love mentors, man, is because you're giving me a chance to learn what you had. Remembering is faster than learning. I was working with this UFC fighter the other day. I said, hey, man, if you and I are fighting and I'm remembering and you're learning, I'm going to win because remembering is faster than learning. And that's what I love so much about the Bible. There's nothing I'm going to face as an individual that doesn't have a version of that or a parallel of that in the Bible. And it's a historical book. It's a historically accurate book, right? It is God breathed but it's also intensely practical. I tell people like, hey man, even if you don't love Jesus, if you read a Proverbs a day, you'll be good because there's tons of wisdom in there, right? So I think the false gods and coming to grips with how we've let them let us down, and that terminology is really important. Like we've let them let us down. The false gods have no power in and of themselves. They're totems and tokens, right? But we made them gods in our lives, and they fail us because we let them. And there's one God that won't fail us, right? And he's the one that, is the most honest. I mean, John 16:33, in this world you have times of troubles. And also we look at adversity as like, I must have done something wrong, right? We're like, no, it's just, this isn't heaven, right? And I tell my daughters all the time, I was like, hey, here is not heaven. Doesn't mean it needs to be hell, but here's not heaven. So I've done this for years, and I think it's maybe the most important thing I do every day is I read the Bible to my daughters. I want my daughters to have the Bible read to them by their dad. It's a letter from their father read to them by their dad, right? And Holt Lunsford's the one who kind of inspired this for me as he talked about his father. And, so every morning I used to read it in my phone, I'd send it to him. And then I would record it, video it, and then I'd send it to them. And they're like, Dad, we love this, but you're using all our memory. So I was like, no, that's a good point. It's very practical. So I created this little family YouTube page. So every day I read a chapter of the Bible and I kind of share my thoughts with it and I send it to them. And man, I can't tell you how many days I haven't wanted to read the Bible. Like I wake up in the morning, I'm mad, I'm embarrassed, I'm ashamed, whatever it is. And by 10 a.m., one of my daughters would be like, hey, Dad, you going to send us the Bible for the day? And it's crazy. Like I'll read that chapter. I'm like, is that new? Like I've read this before. I don't think the God just put this in here, but no, it's like it's always been there. But for me, that's one of those daily disciplines. And so I'm reading Job right now. And the arc of Job is fascinating to me. And Eliphaz and Bildad and Zophar. And what you're seeing these men do is, and this is pre-Jesus. This is like, Noah, Moses kind of timeline, right? And what they're saying is like, hey, if I'm good, he'll bless me. If I'm bad, he'll punish me, right? And I think we just have this habit of making things harder than they need to be or reading more into it than they need to. And this is the thing, there's this kind of debate. So King David wrote his death song, right? And the debate is like, when did he write it? Because there's a verse inside his death song, he says, you found me blameless and faultless and righteous in all my ways. So everyone's like, well, he couldn't have written that in his life. Like, dude's got to be a little bit self-aware. He could have never written that. But I think he did.
Yeah.
Because I think what made David a man after God's own heart was he took God literally. And God said, if you ask me to forgive you, I'll forgive you as though it never happened. So when he was writing that, he must have prayed for forgiveness. And right before he wrote that verse, and God's very clear, if you confess, repent, so it never happened. So right now, he may have thought about something he shouldn't have after that. But when he wrote that verse, in his head and his heart, he was blameless and faultless in all his ways. And we can tend to look at God as just the best man we know.
The best version of ourselves.
The best version of a man we know. But he's not. He's not a man. His ways are far and beyond us. And that means we just need to be able to, without understanding, take him at face value. And people put this premium on understanding stuff. I'm like, that's a very selective premium. Like, what do you mean? I'm like, you understand everything. Yes, I have to understand and believe. I'm like, great. How's your iPhone work? And they're like, well, I'm like, well, listen, how's Bluetooth work? And where's the cloud? Do you know where it is? And then people are like, man, maybe I don't put a premium on fully understanding before I can believe it. I'm like, no, you don't. You don't understand polysorbonate and what it does to your, did you eat it? Right. So,
if the metric of my faith and success is understanding,
is comprehension,
I'm in trouble.
100%. Yet we do that with God.
Mm-hmm.
We try to force God to prove himself in a way that we never forced Steve Jobs. And if you got to give me the person to trust the most, I'm trusting God more than Steve Jobs, right? So I think that's one of the reasons we're miserable sometimes, is because the false gods are failing him. And we let the false gods fail us by making them gods in the first place. And this isn't something I'm perfect at. It's just something I'm really good at reminding myself of every day.
How do you see this in guys coming out of the military?
Sure.
With PTSD and...
Yeah, PTSD is a little bit different in that it's kind of a trauma induced thing. I think depression may be a better way to describe it. Mm-hmm. Like, a depression is like this not necessarily clinical depression, but these are physiological things, PTSD and clinical depression, right? What you have is this massive disappointment that leads, if uninterrupted, leads to despair, right? What you thought life was going to be like when you got out of the military versus what it really is, right? What you thought people were going to be like when you came home versus what they really are. Who you thought you'd be once you got out by who you're realizing yourself to be, right? But I think the difference between veterans and athletes, I think there's not, for me, there's much of a difference between a veteran and an athlete. I've kind of been both. And for me, they're just lions and tigers, both kind of apex predators on these maps that they've been on and in some ways highly subsidized. What I mean by that is when you're at these really elite levels of anything, what happens is you're put in a position where 80% of the everything every day is handled by somebody else, and 100% of you is aimed at the 20% that's different about this problem, right? And so you love process, you just never had to build it. You step into it, you inhabit it. Like surgeons don't run the OR. Head nurses run the OR. Surgeons
just hold
are
the scalpel.
put in a position to come in and do this really remarkable thing and aim 100% of them at the 5% of the surgery, right? And so what happens is we get out and we begin to realize how subsidized we were from an effort perspective. And then we feel dumb, because these fairly simple things that someone always did, now I have to do. Like I can put together a piece of demolition. Like I can wire these wildly exotic kind of demolition charges, right? But estimated quarterly taxes freak me out, right? And so no one likes feeling dumb. Then all of a sudden we got out, or me, I'll only speak for me, and I feel dumb at the everyday. And I'm good at the extraordinary, but I feel dumb at the everyday, right? And everybody goes through these seasons. My deal is like, what do you do about it? How long are you going to sit in that feeling, right? And so I think, I think men, we sometimes set ourselves up for failure by betting on false gods and pretending that we're more of who we're not.
Do we give those expectations to ourselves, or do we get those from other people?
Both. Well, my answer is we give them to ourselves. And we give them ourselves because we believe other people or don't believe other people. So indirectly, we may be influenced by other people, but choosing to believe that and abide by that is still me. I have total authorship and ownership over that, right? As I've been influenced by someone, but it's still my decision to believe that or not believe it. So I think it's all on us, which should be very empowering, because all we have to do is like, no, I don't believe that.
Yeah.
Like you want as a man, you want a photo negative of Dan Balzerian's life. Whatever that dude does, photo negative, 100% opposite of it, right? And I'm not picking on him. I just, everything he's about. I mean, if my girls came home with him, like he and I'd have a tune-up conversation real quick in the back, right? And,
don't Google Dan Balzerian.
Yeah, that dude better not show up my door. And once I'm done, I'll pick him up, hug him, like, hey man, be about some better stuff. And but I think that we have to take ownership of how we talk to ourselves, what we allow ourselves to believe. I was working with this really great football team last year, and I told them, I said, man, I would never let anybody talk to me the way I talk to me. I wouldn't let anybody talk to me the way I talk to me. Well, that's not okay. So why am I talking to me in a way that I wouldn't let anybody else talk to me, right? And that's kind of, I think it's okay to be your own fan. It's not okay to be your own God. And somewhere in between those two is kind of where we need to be.
Unpack that for me a little bit more, because I think that's profound.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're fearfully, wonderfully made, or we're not, right? So it's okay to be a fan of God's work, even though it's in yourself. Like, you can love the Grand Canyon, but you hate yourself. God made them both, right? So I think we need to be okay with being a fan of ourselves, but we can't let ourselves be our own God, right? We know that we're created beings. We're authored. We are the aggregate. We're the right side of an equal sign. And we have our creator plus our moms, our dads, our friends, all these other things, right? So we're this aggregate. And I think to think poorly of yourself is to think poorly of all those who love you and who built into you, and to think poorly of your creator. And I think it's okay to be a fan of yourself, but just don't be your own God. And on those maps, right, like ball field, like the way I run my life now, ball field, boardroom, breakfast table, all three are a battlefield. My everyday enemy is entropy and complacency. And other times I have actual adversaries and enemies and competitors on those maps, right? But I gotta be I'm imperfect. If God loves me, I should probably love me a little bit, right? Not more than I love him. But again, it's okay to be your own fan, just don't be your own God. And I think it's a lifelong pursuit of just staying inside that continuum, right?
I love that. Be a fan of who God wants you to be and chase that.
If he loves me and he's the judge, then I'd at least not hate me, right?
Do you see that a lot?
Oh, man, I think I'm super gifted at self-loathing. Like, I'm really, really good at it, unchecked. But once I realize it, I can stop myself. But I think we're in what makes it even more stealthy is it's kind of masked in virtuousness. I'm hard on myself because I want to be better for everybody else. I'm like, okay, well then ask them how you're doing. You know, I work with executives and athletes all the time, and I go, hey, what's your greatest fear? And I'd say 90% of the time, it's disappointing those I love the most. I'm like, great. Have you asked them how they can disappoint you? And they go, what do you mean? I'm like, go. Hey, what are 3 ways I can disappoint you? And they'll tell you. And then you just got to believe them. Either they're a liar or they're being honest. And if you didn't do those 3 things, then maybe it's a miscommunication. If I didn't disappoint you, then we're having a disagreement, or maybe we're miscommunicating. But like, I know how to disappoint my wife, and I just don't do them. You know, I know how to make my wife know she's mine, because I ask her every year, hey, give me 5 ways to let you know you're mine.
Is that define? I mean, would you say that's defining the boundaries?
That's
of the map?
exactly what it is.
Yeah.
That's the always and the nevers, right? On my phone over there, I have this counter. You know, everyone talks about the 10,000 hour rule, right? I'm like, yeah, 10,000 repetitions, 10,000 hours is probably true. The problem I have with it is we apply it to our passions and our professions, but we don't apply it to our personal lives. And like for me, you know, you get strong, you know, to get a good bench, you bench press. You know, you get big squat, you squat, right?
You do the thing.
You do the thing.
Yeah.
And so, hey, Amy, what are 5 ways that make you feel special? And I just do those things. And like, she's mad at me. I'm like, wow, I haven't gotten a rep in a week. No wonder she's mad, right?
Yeah.
But it's the same discipline. You know, it's the same discipline. Like my daughters, hey, give me 5 ways to let you know you're mine. And I can look at my counter and go, man, I've gotten a rep in 5 days. You know, every time I send that Bible verse, the chapter to them, 1, 1, 1, 1, right? So like, yeah, I mean, there's no mystery to it. It's not hard. You just got to do it, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the hardest part of a discipline. Is
hey, how do you get better at swimming? Swim. How do you get better at running? Run. He's got to do the thing, right?
It's quite simple.
There's this. I don't know the movie, but it's I don't know the name of it, but it's an amazing scene, and Miles Teller is in it. And Miles is this really deep dude. He played Brendan McDonough. If you've seen the movie Only the Brave, about so Brendan's a really close friend. He's like my little brother. I love him. And Miles played him, right? And he told me Miles is a really deep, soulful guy. But there's a scene, and I think it's the one where he's a boxer and he's recovering from getting his neck broke. And there's a scene, and it looks like it's in a kitchen where this reporter goes, "What's the biggest lie you were ever told?" And he goes, "It's not that simple." And she goes, "What do you mean it's not that simple?" He's like, "No. That's the biggest lie I was ever told. It's not that simple. It is that simple. You just do the thing." And there's people that'll tell you can't do this thing unless you do this, this, and this. That's the lie. Lie, it is that simple. Just do the thing, right? You know, like, hey, so what's the thing? I want to be an elite husband. Okay, what do elite husbands do? And that's why I was chasing guys in the Watermark parking lot whose teenage daughter was holding their hand. I'm like, I want my daughters to hold my hand when they're teenagers. How do you do that? You know, and for some reason we make that harder. Like when I was playing football, I watched Dick Butkus, Jack Lambert, Chris Seelman, Sam Huff, Ken Norton Jr., Jack Del Rio. I mean, we do that in every other phase of our lives, right? Yet somehow we don't do this in these other phases of our lives. Like, it's, you know, that's what the teachers would call a non sequitur, I think. I don't know, maybe, right? Born in Arkansas, could be wrong. But for me, there's a process. There's a process for it. So do the thing. Hey, I want to be an elite husband. Okay, what do elite husbands do? And don't ask a husband. I mean, maybe ask him, but make sure his wife's sitting there nodding, going. I'll give you an example. I have this thing called the 5 rule, right? So I have daughters, 3 daughters and a bride. So I'm outnumbered all the time. And I'm not a good woman. I'm very, very different, right?
Yeah.
So I started this, and I don't do it all the time, but when I do it, my life is blessed, and I think I'm a blessing to them. But my thing is, I can't say anything back to my bride or my daughters until I say 5 times. Because I'm a fixer, I'm a protector. So once there's a problem, I'm like, you
aim yourself at the problem,
right?
Yeah.
Like I don't throat punch that. And then I would start doing the mm-hms. So my bride will start saying this, and I'm like, And I can't tell you how many times I've been at that third I'm like, boy, I'm so glad I didn't say anything. I've been so wrong, right? Now the fourth one, I'm like, she did what? I'm going to fight her dad right now, right? Like, but man, that 5 rule it's a process that's helped me become a better listener, and becoming a better listener is helping me become a better husband and a daddy, right? And it's, how many times I listen? How do you define listening? Did I do the 5 rule? I mean, sometimes you just got to make up these metrics. Like, how do you quantify that you're a good listener? You really can't. What you can quantify is whether you have a process to make sure you're a good listener, right? Like, that's why I love about weightlifting. Like, there's no real lift at the gym that perfectly replicates a hit on the football field. Maybe a super cat, like a bear cat, something like that. But most time you're incorporating these movements that culminate in a good hit on the football field. And so you give yourself credit for the rep, knowing that in application it'll probably prove itself. So for me, the 5 rule is a rep that has more often than not led to me being a good husband and a good daddy and a good friend and a good teammate and a good boss and a good client and a good employer, right? So you'd have to ask people in my life if I'm a good listener or not, but I can tell you whether or not I've done the reps.
What's the idea of being ready? It's what are you ready for? I don't know.
Ready is probably my favorite word. I mean, it's on my email. Since 2007, my email signature is ready. People are ready for what? And I always find that to be a real interesting conversation. I'm like, what are you most worried about? They can tell me what they're most worried about really quickly. I'm like, well, then let's just be ready for that. That's my whole building's called the Ready Lab. And that's what it is. Like, what do you want to get ready for? They tell me, I'm like, okay, let's get ready for that.
That's cool.
I want to get ready for buzz. Okay, let's get ready for that. I want to get ready for the moment where someone may come into my house. Like, okay, let's get ready for that. Right? Yeah. Let's, we have all these systems that, for instance, I've always taught my daughters what I call the ready for. And the ready for, the only things you need to know when and how to do. You need to when and how to get out, protect, treat, and shelter. Those are always your options, right? And so we sit down and we talk. So for me, the ready for is this language that we use to think about, talk about, train for, and take action in the face of a risk event. And so like, hey, what are you worried about? And they tell me. I'm like, okay, that happens. What's the first right thing to do? Do you get out? Do you protect? Do you treat? Do you shelter? And, context is going to drive that answer, but you're always going to know the first right thing to do, right? And then when we're assigning a metric to it, we have these filters, probability, difficulty, availability, and responsibility. And everything's a 1 through 4 scale for me because I'm a pretty simple guy. So, hey, I have this fear. Probability, unlikely, possible, probable, and imminent, 1 through 4. Difficulty, this is kind of based on cognitive science, neuroscience, right? And basically in the cognitive science world, when you look at an element of something being difficult to solve, you have simple, complicated, complex, chaotic, right? Availability from a readiness perspective is that, hey, when I press 911, how long am I waiting for expert third party to get to me? Not my neighbor with a flex hose, God love him. When's that fire truck pulling up? Minutes, hours, days, unknown. And then responsibility is how many souls am I responsible for? Me, 1. Me plus 1 to 2 is 2. Me plus 3 to 5 is 3. Me plus many is 4. And as you run these filters through that, you can assign a metric to the risk reality, right? So this amazing friend, she's brilliant, she's a genius, and she's convinced that aliens are going to invade. It's just one of these eccentricities, right? And then when we talk about it, I go, hey, listen, you think it's imminent. I think it's unlikely. Can we just land at like 2.75 for this conversation? And she's like, fine. And then we go to difficulty. I go, hey, listen, if they come, 4, chaos. I'm with you. No arguing on that. Availability, all resources are going to be strained. We're at 4 there too, because it's an unknown. Responsibility, I'm always going to be responsible for everyone I can see around me, so I'm at 4. So I was like, 4. So we have 14.75 when we look at this particular risk. And there's something about quantifying it that takes the hair off of it and makes it easier to fathom and to consider, right? Like,
because it turns it into a math problem.
It's real. It's a real deal, right? Like my deal is like it's not that there's no emotions. It's just that there's nothing but emotions, right? And like I'll walk people through that. And like when we do our assessments and stuff on the TRG side of things, hey, what's the felt risk? What's the observed risk? And the felt risk is how you feel, because you got to meet people where they are. My job isn't to convince you. My job is to meet you where you are and tell you what the data, my experience, my teammates say, and then to help you get ready for it. And what will happen is you'll gravitate more towards what the data, barring some psychological trauma that is a real deal. Like I give 2 books away more than any other book. I give the Bible and Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. It's perhaps one of the premier books in understanding trauma. And I read it because of my background and my friends and all these other things. And I really feel like it should be mandatory reading in a lot of ways as far as understanding how trauma happens and what we do with it, right? But it's amazing, man, that the heat just the emotions go down once you put a number, because everything plus imagination is scarier. Like if you're walking through the woods and there's a cave and you hear a growl, like that's the biggest bear that's ever existed. It's got wings, breathes fire. And you either go in there with a torch and see it, or you get it out. And once you see it, it's like, oh, that is a big bear. But now I see it, I can kill it. Like my deal is like, give the dragon a name, then fight it. Like make it real. Because anything plus imagination multiplied by fear is going to be too much. So make it real.
Wow. I got to chew on that.
And it's like, I'm such a visual guy. Like for me, I don't know that these work. They work for me. I mean, they've gotten me here, and I'm not that unique. I mean, I don't think I'm a very special person. So if it worked for me, a degree of it may work for other people. But see, these are some of the ways I've learned to help myself be and stay ready. Stay ready. That's kind of the thing.
Mm-hmm. So that was the best 30-minute tangent off of your story I think I could have imagined.
A 30-minute tangent is actually pretty small for me. I mean, I can channel surf with the best of them, buddy. I can go different places.
When you went, so from training to being deployed, as an officer, leading how many men?
So in a platoon, there's generally between 17 and 20. We talk about your guys, and you get some PJs, some EOD guys with you, and then in this task unit, it's more than 30. So I was always a small unit guy, so it was like 25, 30 or less.
Mm-hmm. Do you still keep in touch with a lot of those guys?
These are my dearest friends. Right?
That's one of the things.
I'm so proud of them.
Gosh, it's so consistent with guys I meet in Special Forces is just the camaraderie and the brotherhood that exists.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing. Like this is what we all love about football too.
Sports teams.
A lot of people say like, "Hey, I don't miss the circus, but I miss the clowns." Right? But everybody feels that way about their fraternities, the sororities, any group that you did hard things with, and you made it through. You're gonna have some affection for, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm a big fan on staying in touch. I'm horrible with phone calls. I got to get better, but I'm really fast with text, right? And so like for me, I'm a big just, hey, love you, thinking about you, no need to respond, right? But I'm going to, I've lost enough people without knowing the last time they heard me tell them I love them that that's not going to happen again. Like I've got to, I'll hit 15 to 20 people a day with just a quick text, hey, I love you, proud of you, thinking of you. No need to respond, right? And the no need to respond is like it's genuine. You don't have to respond. I didn't say this. You could say it back to me. But I think it makes it easier for them to read and sometimes easier for me to send because I don't actually have time to have a long conversation. But if you're on my mind, I'm going to let you know, right? But these are kind of these daily disciplines, that I've learned to do because they work for me.
So when you say boardroom, I was looking on your bio. There's 4 things that you define as what you're doing right now.
Yeah. TRG, hold fast, windage, and what's the other one I put up there?
There was a 4th.
Probably Launchpad, which is So really all those things it sounds complicated, but really what it is my favorite thing is to create opportunities for veterans and athletes, the guy I used to be, who are having to reinvent and recalibrate themselves as they come from the ball field and the battlefield into the boardroom because it's terrifying. And my deal is help guys make that ball field, battlefield to boardroom transition more effective than I was so they can be at the breakfast table who they said they'd be when they said I do. And so one of the things I say is like, we're going to win the war on veteran and athlete suicide with the power of daily wins and a good day's work. Daily wins are add value to the kind of person you want to be around and learn from, with what you already know how to do as you leave the ball field and battlefield and come to the boardroom. And a good day's work is provision for yourself and your family, by adding value to the kind of person you want to be around and learn from, which you already know how to do as you lead the ball field and battlefield and come to the boardroom so you can be at the breakfast table who you said you'd be when you said I do, or you want to be. That's just Proverbs 22:29. You see a man excellent in his work and not speak for small ministry for kings. And if you do it well enough, you're not going to tell anybody about it because they'll tell you. Proverbs 27:2, let no one boast for himself, a stranger's lips is not his own. So like my business plan is, it's 5 verses. It's Psalm 127, unless the Lord builds the house, the laborers work in vain. It's 1 Peter 5, 6, and 7. Do not put on airs. God will promotion in his due time. He's very careful for you. He's going to write a better book for you than you can write for yourself, right? And as a guy who struggles with tremendous insecurity, that's a powerful verse for me, right? Galatians 6:9, this is the chopping wood verse, like, do not go where you're doing is right, and a time reap a harvest and a benefit. Proverbs 22:29, you see a man excellent in his work, and not speak for small ministers before kings. Proverbs 27:2 is let no one boast for himself, a stranger's lips and not his own. So ask God into it, don't sweat it, do work, be excellent, shut up, repeat. And so those 4 companies are really, what I say is you come off the ball field in the battlefield, you're uniquely positioned to help people protect themselves and each other, perform at a high level from the neck up, that's hold fast. Train, compete, and recover from the neck down, that's windage, that's the sports and human performance side. And then launchpad is help grow, lead, and launch people in the private sector. The senior enlisted, I think, they're the best people on the planet at people, programs, or process. And I don't know, a single company or a single industry doesn't struggle with people, programs, or process. So you have these sergeants, these senior chiefs, these master guns, they're the best in the world. And so putting them in positions where they can help lead, grow, and retain people is really fun for me. But so protect, perform, compete, recover, lead. Those are the 4 things. So each one of those companies kind of, TRG is protect yourself and those you love. Hold fast is perform at a high level, compete and recover is, adventure, train, recover, right? Overcome injuries. And then launchpad is find a new X on a map. So it's not really as busy as it seems. And in the special operations community, in the military on the whole, what I try to do is intake people, and then I spread them across those business lines. And then if I've done my job in 21 months or less, I'll lose 80% of my people. 80% of my people will get recruited away from me from my
and they'll
clients.
thrive.
They'll thrive. And they've done it in a way where, like, my deal is like, there's men and women. For me, business is kind of a capture strategy. The boardroom is the map that I'm on right now. And what I've used is business as a way to find time with people I want to learn from and be around by using what I already know how to do to figure out what to do next and to listen to them tell me what to do next. Like, they've been on this map longer than me. So I'm going to earn the right to ask a question that makes me feel dumb. Like, I don't know a single guy that's excited to walk in and go, hey, man, Clint, I don't feel like I can protect myself and my family as much as I want to. Like, that's a humbling question. That's a really authentic question for a man to ask me. And I tell these guys, like, you think he was excited to tell you that? But he did. And you owe him a humble question that makes you feel nervous too, right? And so again, it's like, that's what I love about the Ready Lab. The Ready Lab is like this epiphany factory and an empathy engine. People come down there, and that's my training facility downtown. You'll come down to it. You'll see it. My wife calls it the Honor Lost Boys. I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, if a 14-year-old is in their office waiting for their mom to come pick them up, it would look like your office.
It look like this.
And I'm like, yeah, well, your office would be pretty, smell nice. Because, like, we have a climbing wall. We have 2 climbing walls. We have a gym. We have a hostage rescue facility. We got a situation room. We got an athletic trainer downstairs because pain just makes you a bad version of yourself. We have a podcast studio downstairs, and we have these offices. So it's like a warrior WeWork.
Let's go.
Yeah, it's pretty. She's kind of right. She's like, you're like Peter Pan.
You're like,
what?
okay.
She goes, you just don't want to grow up. I'm like, you don't want to grow up. Your head's full of rocks. What? Nothing. And
So you speak a lot. You do a lot of podcasts. You share your story a ton.
I'm fortunate, man. I get asked to do that quite a bit, and for me, I tell veterans all the time, like, Holdfast is a speakers bureau, an executive coaching bureau that really features veterans, and so all of our speakers are veterans, and some guys are more comfortable with the coaching piece than they are speaking piece, and I don't really care. I'm just going to get you in front of a guy who's going to see more in you than you do, and I'm probably going to lose you to him if I've done my job right. And you're going to be working at J.P. Morgan Chase, and you fought in Fallujah didn't think you could be an executive, and now you're running a region for a bank, right? And because you can't fight if you can't think, because you could think you could do anything, but it just takes a little while for you to. I mean, these maps have these different legends and lexicons. Like, the map of the ocean is called a chart, but it's still a map. A fathom is 6 feet. Like, what are the equivalencies? What's the lexicon? What's the legend? And once you learn those, you realize that nothing's really different.
Yeah, it's just
right?
deploying the same skills.
100%. 100%. Yeah. So,
what do you think? What question is never asked in situations where you're interviewed that you kind of wish people would ask?
I can't think of one off the top of my head, man. I've always been really impressed by some of the questions that people come up with. Not a lot of people ask me about beard care. I mean, I feel like this thing's not.
Well, I mean, you're obviously an expert.
VO5 hot oil. No, you can only shine this up so much.
There's only so many things that you're expert. No, you're an expert in 100 things, and I've only gotten through 10.
I can't really think of anything. It's like, man, I wish they would ask. I'm just really humbled that I get asked questions in the first place, right? Like, and I work really hard to tell people it's like, I'm not an expert. I'm an adventurer that takes notes and shares lessons liberally. I'm not an expert. I'm an adventurer that takes a lot of notes and shares my scars. And that's, that's kind of the deal, right? Like, I'm not an expert in anything, but I've tried a lot. And like, hey, here's my notes, right? And as much as I've relied on yeah, like that's what I love about the living library is like I get to remember what men I love, trust, and admire had to learn the hard way, or I can learn it the hard way too. And I love remembering your hard lesson. I mean, there's plenty of times that people go like, "Hey, Clint, if you do this, this will happen." I'm like, whatever, man. I'm Clint Bruce, and then 2 weeks later, I come back like, apparently, being Clint Bruce doesn't matter at all. Like, it might make it worse, actually, right? And I should have learned, but we all do that because none of our names is Jesus, right?
Yeah.
Like, we've all made the mistakes that the Bible has told us and endure the consequences. Like, there's nothing new in there.
Yeah.
It's just, do we listen or do we not? And, I tell people just make new mistakes.
That's profound. Just make new mistakes.
That's, of this kind of keynote, we call it championing, because you put the ing on anything and now it's a verb, right? So if you're winning championships over and over again, you're championing. And so for me, there's really 4 qualities that championship organizations always have. They have passion, they have talent, they have precision, and they have endurance. And the higher up you go, the less passion and talent matter. And it's not because they don't matter, it's just everybody's got it. Like if you're in the Olympics, everybody's got passion and talent. So it's not the deciding factor. All things being equal, it will reemerge as the deciding factor. So what's really left is precision and endurance. And I look at precision maybe differently than other people. For me, precision isn't being right more, it's being wrong less. Like precision is being wrong less. Like that's a much more faithful and honest way to say how things really happen, right? Like to say right more, that's an academic. In the real world, it's entropy and chaos and all these other things.
Smaller misses.
That's it. And I tell people, it's like, hey, I hate it when he goes, he gets stronger as the game goes on. No one gets stronger as the game goes on. What you're seeing is someone who declines slower. And they're declining slower because they're making less mistakes. Mistakes cost energy and time. Therefore, if you make less mistakes, you have more energy and time. And every football game I ever played in was me and the clock. Me and Army and the clock, Air Force the clock, Notre Dame the clock. Clock didn't care about either one of us. And so I think the more authentic team always wins because they save time. Like whatever the time that mistake cost me, if I don't share it with other people, I'm doubling or tripling down on that time lost, right? And for me, I've always been really fortunate that I've been in an environment where I'm surrounded by geniuses, right? Like all these dudes in the SEAL teams, Marshak, all these, most of the enlisted men and women I've ever been around, I've been blown away by, I mean, if you don't know much about the military, here's the reality. And all but the aviation community, the enlisted is where the talent is. That's what our enemies rightly fear, their courage, creativity, initiative, and valor of our enlisted men and women. And if the enlisted are the backbone, the senior enlisted are the spinal cord. And I'm not diminishing the officer community in the aviation community. I'm just telling you that's where the real talent is, right? And they're all geniuses. And I was working with the NFL team one time, and the coach said, make no mistakes. And I kind of flinched when he said it. And he sees everything. He's this fascinating guy. And he goes, Clint. I said, yes, sir. He goes, why'd you flinch when I said make no mistakes? And I said, I'm going to answer your question, but it's not a critique because I haven't done what you've done. Like, I'm, won these games and stuff. I said, these guys are geniuses. I said, I'm around geniuses all the time. And the worst thing we could do to genius is say make no mistakes because genius evolves. Like if Barry Sanders is your running back, you have 2 plays. Barry run left, Barry run right. You just take notes. You're like, oh, other people can do that. Let's play. No, that's just Barry being Barry. We can't replicate that one, right? But genius innovates and evolves, right? And you don't want to stifle that. So when you say make new mistakes, you're giving genius permission to innovate, but you're also making a pro. Because in order to make new mistakes, what do you got to do? You got to know everything about your old ones. There's an NFL guy I get to work with. He's super impressive. And I was talking to him a couple of years ago. I said, what are you doing? He goes, I'm trying to figure out what I ate on Tuesday. I'm like, what? He goes, I inventory everything I ate from Wednesday through Sunday. And in the third quarter of last Sunday's game, I felt sluggish. So it must have been something I ate on Tuesday. I'm like, or you played in Denver. It's Mile High's not a metaphor. Like it might have been that, right? But I was so impressed by the fact that he was inventorying. He is famous for being a very precision-oriented guy. But that's a byproduct of a discipline. That's the boundaries. What do I always do? What do I never do? And for me, the game in life is to have more nevers than always, but the always, they're always, right? That's Proverbs. That's the Bible. The Bible is full of nevers and always. And we're going to relearn what someone was trying to tell us, or we're going to remember it. I mean, it's it. Do I remember or do I relearn what you already know? And I think we have an obligation. Like, authenticity is what you call vulnerability when you're not scared anymore. When you're scared, it's vulnerability. When you're not scared anymore, it's called authenticity. But it's the same thing, right? And so I think the more authentic you are, the more time you save. You know, because I'm like, how do I know that? You tell me I do that, right? Or, hey, when you do this, this is going to happen. Don't do that, right? And so for me, it's a harvester. You get more time, and the time you have is more fruitful, you know?
The freedom to fail is something that really unlocked for me in college when I got really frustrated at grading on a curve.
Yeah.
Like I just didn't understand it. Why are we doing this? And so I went to one of my professors.
Well, I was the curve.
You were the curve?
I was the curve. I'd walk in and people were like, oh, Clint's here.
Look,
we're all going to pass, right? Sorry, I didn't mean to steal your story.
No, it's 100% because I went to the professor. I'm like, you've got to help me understand this because it doesn't make sense to me. He's like, if you make 100% on a test, I've measured nothing.
Right.
So why are we even doing it? I have no idea where you are in the measurement.
Yeah.
I've measured nothing. And that's why I make it so hard that you will fall below that measure
That's fascinating.
of perfection. And that's one of the simple things that unlocked it.
I've never thought of it that way before. That makes perfect sense. 100% just tells me you're a mirror. It doesn't tell me what you know.
Yeah, it does not. It does not tell me what you know.
Yeah.
So
I like that. That's better than my story.
No, I thought it does. It's just
yeah. So,
well, Clint, dude, we got to do this again.
Man, you're close. Yeah, I love this, man. I think it's so cool, and I've enjoyed the shows I've gotten to watch. I know you could call this one Tangent Highway. Like talking to Clint's like just going through
the show about everything.
Going through the mix master. Oh, wow, let's turn left, go through this one. Where's this one go? Let's go through this one.
I mean, we're right next to the high five.
I love it. I don't know what happened, but I really enjoyed it. Right? So sorry to drag y'all over the place, but this is cool.
This is awesome.
I love sharing my. I don't love having them, but I do love sharing them. Right.
Well, how can people follow you and what you're doing?
Oh, my daughters told me I have a LinkedIn's the only social media I somewhat understand. But my daughters told me I have a real Clint Bruce is the Instagrams.
For beard care information.
VO5 oil. That's, you don't need to go any further than that. Beef tallow. Yeah, I'd say LinkedIn's probably the best way to kind of follow or stay in touch. Or I'm trying to get better at the Instagram. We built an app. I'll send you a link to it. You can post. I've invited you're on the app, aren't you? Didn't I invite you to it?
Maybe.
Or maybe I did. Maybe clearly it's not very good if I invited you and you don't know that you're on it. But I'll resend you about it. It's like my version of social media. 'Cause I don't really like social media. Because I just don't think many people care what I think. But if you care what I think, I'm happy to share it with you. And so the app was kind of my version of a way to do that. So I'll send you a link to that
more
too.
About that.
So yeah.
All right. Well, Clint, thanks for being on.
Yeah, man, you got to come down to the Ready Lab.
I'm coming.
Bring you down sometime soon.